and we are live with the Cafecito from Coconino County Latinas. So my name is Feliz Baca, and I'm a program coordinator in Supervisor Archuleta's office, and I identify as a Nuevo Mexicana Chicana. Supervisor Archuleta?
Well, buenos dias, and thank you for joining us for our Cafecito. I'm Liz Archuleta, and I identify as a Mexican-American, Hispanic, and Latina. Oh, and I'll turn it over to Viviana. How about that?
Hi, everyone. I'm Viviana Reyes, and I am in the Public Works Department, and I identify as Mexicana, Latina, Hispana, all of it. And I will turn it over to Theresa.
Good morning, everyone. I am Theresa. I am the Executive Assistant for Supervisor Archuleta, and I identify myself as a Mexican-American Chicana.
Fantastic. So I love all the representation that we have here this morning. And we're going to start off with a fun question. So if you were a type of pan dulce, what type of pan dulce would you be? Supervisor Archuleta?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, and hey, let's just call us Liz. Let's just go by first names, okay? So, well, first of all, cafecito means we're having a coffee. So we're just, we're just here visiting. We're in our living rooms, and we're having a good cup of coffee, strong coffee, which my favorite is like actually Mexican coffee, which has cinnamon, and it also has a sugar, like a brown sugar in it. It's really delicious. So if I was having that coffee, my cafecito, I would have my favorite pan dulce. Pan dulce is like a donut or a sweet bread or something sweet, and that's in Spanish. And so I would be having the pink Mexican cookies. They're really vibrant pink, and they have sugar on them. They're dipped in sugar, and I've always liked that just since I was a kid. They're just like melt in your mouth, kind of like a shortbread butter cookie, but they're this really vibrant pink. And I think when I was a kid, I just was drawn to that pink. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Awesome. And Theresa, how about you?
I like a good strong coffee, and I add cinnamon and vanilla to it. And that's my favorite here at home. And my favorite are the pig cookies that are the pumpkin flavor. Oh, to be able to just break that and dump it. I'm a dunker, so that.
Oh, the little cochinitos, the pigs, you said? Yeah. Oh yeah, those are so good.
And it's like, I like the pan dulce, but if you dip that, it gets too soggy, but the little piggy stays nice and perfect.
Wish I had one.
Right?
Viviana?
I can totally relate, Theresa. I'm also a dunker. I actually grew up drinking very milky coffee. So it was really, really good coffee, but with a lot of milk in it. But now I take my coffee really, really strong. Like it has to be almost black because I need that level of caffeine in my life. And as far as pan dulce, my favorite are the conchas in any color, especially like the pink and the yellow. They're probably my favorite. And I think they all taste the same, but to me, like the pink and the yellow just taste extra sweet, and I love them. I love the colors, and so I would definitely take one and dunk it into my coffee, and that's how I do it. So
That's awesome.
And the concha's like that yeast roll, just so everybody knows that it's concha. It looks like a shell, right? Because that crispy sugar topping, it has like a shell pattern on it.
It's just like the best part.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm getting really hungry for pan dulce. So I actually don't drink coffee anymore, but when I was growing up, my grandparents, I think I started drinking coffee at like the age of 2, and not really drinking it, but here in New Mexico, we have a traditional cookie called bizcochitos, which are cinnamon and anise, and they're really traditional around the holidays. And so I just have this fond memory of dipping my bizcochito in my grandparents' coffees, and that was like my first introduction to coffee in my life. But if I was a pan dulce, or if I had to choose my favorite pan dulce, I've recently started expanding my pan dulce selection, and they are making these really good ones that are, it's like a piece of bread with mantequilla on top, and then it also has sugar sprinkled on it, and that's probably my favorite right now. So
that's a good one.
just a little sweet and savory at the same time.
Yeah, I've had that before. It's really good.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're called, but they're absolutely delicious.
Yeah. I need a chart of all the different pan dulces and their names, because I just call them all pan dulce.
Right.
Same here.
Yeah.
I think everybody does, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing that. So obviously this is a conversation about Hispanic Heritage Month. And so I'm just going to ask, as a Latina, what does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to each of you?
Yeah, so I was really glad that you brought up bizcochitos, because when I said how I identified, I left something out, and that is with my New Mexican roots from my dad's side. So for me, Hispanic Heritage Month is, and I love bizcochitos. I mean, I started rolling out bizcochitos when I was probably 2 years old, and so what it means to me is just it's a chance for me just to stop and reflect on who I am as an Hispana, as a Mexican American, as a Latina, as a Mexicana. I mean, it's just like we use all these words and these labels, and I know that it's really probably confusing, but the fact is that there's so much diversity in the Hispanic community, and we all identify differently with different groups within the Latino or Hispanic community. And so for me, it's just a chance to think about like people who've come before me. I mean, I'm a big believer that there are so many trailblazers that have come before us. So stopping just to reflect and being grateful on that, on the contributions of Hispanics before me. I'm thinking about my ancestors, my parents and my great-grandparents, and their sacrifices to create life for future generations. It's a chance for me just to celebrate my culture, to share it with others, and to invite them in to be part of, to get to learn about that part of my life. And so I mean, it's great. I mean, it's 1 month to be able just to do all of that, and to think about the future too. Like, what does it mean to be Hispanics in the future? Like, what are the issues that face our community, and how can I be an agent of change?
Absolutely. And Viviana, what about you? What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you?
It's very similar. I mean, I think it's a time to celebrate my culture, and a time to reflect on just what it means to be Latina, and the incredible influence that I think we as Latinos have had in this country and across the world. And I agree with Liz that there's so much diversity within the Latino community. I have a mom who's from Guatemala, and my dad's from Mexico, and I was raised by a stepfather from Honduras. And I mean, that's just such a beautiful mix of different cultures. And so during this time, I really like to reflect on all of those Latinos that have made so many contributions to the world, and to celebrate our music, our food, and also to think about what ways I can cultivate a love for art culture and bring that into my home, specifically with my daughter who's 9, and she's growing up, and she's learning our language and learning our foods, and just taking that time to really just celebrate. And like I said, I'm always a Latina every single day, every moment of the day, but during this time, this month, we really get to pause and really reflect on that. And so I'm just happy to celebrate, and that's what it means to me. What about you, Feliz?
Well, for me, Hispanic Heritage Month very similar to you all, is a time to reflect and who we are as a people and just the large diaspora that we all come from. So, you know, we're indigenous, we're European, we're Black, and there's just so many different cultural aspects of being a Latino, and we all have so many different backgrounds. And I think that's one of the biggest parts, is the beauty of the Latino community, is that we are a complex community, and we are a beautiful community and a vibrant community. And I think that's what really makes us so special. And so this is a time when we can really start to learn about, you know, Latinos in the Northeast Coast and Latinos from Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and all of the various areas that we come from. And I think that's what's really nice about Hispanic Heritage Month, is that it gives us that time to pause and reflect and really just think about who we are as a people and the cultures that we are able to cultivate in the United States. And also recognize just how much we as a people have truly contributed to the United States and our world. I think we've been able to make lots of contributions, and we have some phenomenal leaders that that are visible now and we're able to look up to, which is pretty incredible. And it's a time to reflect on the resilience of our community, because it obviously has not always been easy, and to really express gratitude for our ancestors before us who have really paved the way for us to be having this cafecito today here at Coconino County. And I think that's really beautiful. So I think it's just a time to recognize the power of who we are as a people. Yeah. How about you, Theresa?
Again, similar things, and I think really reflecting on the different backgrounds that we all come from, and you know, to me, it's sharing that ability to share everything that we are, you know, our food, our art, our traditions, you know, just the culture itself, everything that we have contributed to making Flagstaff in the world what it is. We have such a huge impact. But I think the biggest part is right now, because there is this kind of, it's Hispanic Heritage Month, and they're bringing it to the forefront. It's a way for me to also instill and to share that with my kids and my grandkids, you know, to show them that this is who we are, this is what we are, and you know, to share our language. We're really lucky to have a historian in our family, and she's written a couple of books. And my dad is from Cuba, New Mexico, and so we have that lineage that goes back, you know, and how we got
like 500 years.
That
right?
500 years, you know, and to be able to share that with the kids and say, you know, this is family. This is a book that's been published about us. You know, how special is that? You know, to be able to share that and give them that gift, and you know, to just then say, and this is, you know, this is where we're going. This is where, you know, the impacts that we're having, you know, and that pride that we need to always show on who we are.
Mm-hmm. You know, and thinking about that, I mean, that's so great. I just was thinking about when you said sharing the culture and traditions, like, is there a tradition that each of us have that we like absolutely want to pass on to the next generation, or something in our culture that you want to share? Yeah, Feliz, what do you think about?
So in New Mexico, you know, I grew up between Flagstaff and New Mexico, and my identity has always been kind of complex. I went to school far away, and when I first said that I was New Mexican, I got a lot of like, what does that mean? And so here in New Mexico, we have these rich traditions of luminarias around Christmas times, or farolitos. There's so many different ways to call them. But traditionally, my family and I will go to the cemetery around Christmas time, and we will put luminarias. They're basically brown paper bags, lunch sacks, that you fill with sand and you put a candle in. And it's just a very traditional New Mexican tradition, and we put them out during Christmas time, and we go to the cemetery, and that's a time for us to really honor and connect with our ancestors who have passed. And so that's one of my favorite traditions that I really hope to keep alive, because it's really important to understand your roots and to always be connected to those roots. And so that's one tradition that I really love about my culture.
Mm-hmm.
How about you all?
For me, I think it's more the Dia de los Muertos, you know, and honoring all those that made this road for us, and that has, I think, given us the strength and the knowledge and the pride to be able to continue on that road and to share and to always try to improve ourselves, to improve our community, to improve where we're at, you know, and to instill that in our kids, and to always have that, my altar up with my mom and my grandparents and my great grandparents. I have pictures of all them, and you know, I have one picture of a great grandparent, and to have that up in this year, you know, unfortunately, but fortunately, I get to add my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it just, you know, to be able to share, it's not a sad thing, but those memories to be able to carry on, you know, and for my grandkids who never met my mom to be able to, you know, say, this is what we celebrate. This are the wonderful things that she did. You know, they all come and say, oh, yeah, you got to make me this. Oh, you got to make me that. And then they say, well, where did you learn to cook? And it's like, well, my mom, you know, those are the fondest memories for me, is being able to cook with my mom and her teaching me how to do stuff, and the music in the background, just, you know, not too loud, but loud enough that when you heard that certain little thing, you know, she'd start dancing in the kitchen, or she'd start belting out the words. And, you know, it's those kind of things that, you know, like I said, Dia de los Muertos is in November, but I have my altar up year round. And so, you know, the kids do come and they see that. And my Max is one of my grandkids, and, you know, and with my dad passing so soon, the first thing he does when he comes into the house is he goes and he says, oh, look, there's my big tata. Remember when? And,
Oh,
you know,
that's
and
great.
that's just, you know, that's what we are, you know.
It's beautiful.
And that's what, you know, to me, that's my legacy, is to hopefully have people remember me in that fond way, however I impacted them, you know. That's what I want.
That's beautiful.
Keeping family alive, and it keeps them close to you.
Yeah.
You have them there every day and remember those great memories.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So true. How about you, Viviana? What comes to mind in terms of a tradition or something you want to like pass on?
You know, Theresa, you took me back when you said, you know, being in the kitchen with your mom and the music playing in the background, because that's definitely how I grew up. I think that passing, you know, along our recipes, which are actually not written down, because most of the women in my family just cook off of like memory, and they just know what to do, and you know, this, yes, exactly.
You a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
That's part of your poem. And there's nothing written down ever, and it's like frustrating for someone who's trying to learn these recipes. But you learn by watching, and you learn by doing atualongside, you know, the women in your family. And so, I grew up with a lot of my aunts making tamales from Guatemala, which are quite, you know, there's so much that goes into making them. It's like a huge assembly line, and there's all these things that you know, steps along the way, and a lot of this going on. And I really kind of want to pass on that tradition to Vida. You know, I really want her to experience that like the joy of cooking with other women in your family and all these different generations together in the kitchen. I think that's so beautiful. And of course our foods, and you know, I keep having this like task, this project that I want to do, where I write down all of these recipes and literally just watch everyone pour in their specific like amount of you know, whatever ingredient it is, so that I can actually capture the recipe, because that's definitely something that's so important to me. And you know, food takes me back to like whatever memory is connected to it, and I think that's so important, and of course delicious. So that's something for me that I want to, you know, pass on to Vida. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Guatemalan tamales are tamales in Guatemala. They're with, is it with the banana leaves?
Yes. So they're wrapped in these huge banana leaves. Mm-hmm. They have chile rojo. They'll have like plums in them, olives. They can be chicken, beef. I mean, they kind of have quite a bit in them, but they're delicious, and they're really big. They're good size and wrapped in these banana leaves, and they're just amazing. But they take a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so it was always, growing up, it was always one, you know, family member that would take on the task for the holidays to make those, and everybody would help. And there was like a task for everybody, you know, in the family, just similar to making tamales for Mexico. You know, they're also pretty intense too.
Very intense.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have like a tamale swap, because this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I had tamales when I was in Guatemala, and they're delicious. They're amazing. Well, for me, so yeah, the music and the music and the cooking, I mean, that's definitely a common theme for all of us. I have fond memories. Like every Friday, we would clean the house from top to bottom, and then we would always have like chimichangas or enchiladas, but it always would be Mexican food on Friday, and we'd have the record, you know, stereo playing in the records, and it would always be either like mariachi music, or it would be that Tijuana brass band. I forget, Albert, was my mom's favorite artist. And the Tijuana brass band, I can't remember now, but records, just remembering all these records that we'd put on. But I think the one thing, I mean, food does take me to something that I want to pass on, and that is my mom cooking, making capirotada. And so, I mean, every time I think of capirotada, I think about my mom, because she's, that was handed down like from generation to generation, the capirotada recipe. And capirotada is a bread pudding, and but it sounds simple, a bread pudding, but it's not. It's just like everything else, is pretty complex, because it has so many different ingredients, and like canela sticks, cinnamon sticks, and you boil this syrup. You use this Mexican sugar called piloncillo, which is a big like cone looking like sugar.
Cone of like, yeah.
like rock sugar almost, yeah, rock hard. And you put all these ingredients and mix up this syrup. You toast the bread with butter till it's just golden, and then you add all these ingredients with the syrup, almonds, raisins, cheese. You can put apples or bananas in it. I mean, it's amazing, but it's this amazing dessert. And it's always during Lent. It's a tradition that you make during Lent and on Good Friday. And so you make that along with like 10 other traditional dishes for Lent. And it's one of my favorite times, because everyone sits around the table and just has this incredible meal that everyone's participated in making. And they're all these really old recipes, like they're 5 generations of recipes, and it's just amazing. So I always feel really connected to my ancestors during that particular Good Friday of Lent, because of the meal. So I want to pass that on to the next generation.
These are so many beautiful traditions, and I love learning about everybody's specific traditions and what they hold dear to their hearts. It's very uplifting. So you all are clearly some phenomenal women, and I think, you know, we've been talking about our ancestors and our role models. Do you guys have a specific role model in the Latino community who has influenced you, whether it be family or somebody outside of family?
So I mean, I think we stand on, I think we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And so for me, I mean, there's so many people you can, point to in history that are Hispanics that have made a difference. I mean, you can point to Dolores Huerta, you can point to, Cesar Chavez, you can point to, figures from the, from the 60s. But for me, it starts with just the upbringing, my parents. I mean, I think about my parents, I think about my mother. Really, we have very strong Latinas in my family, and we have very strong Latinos that support Latinas in my family, which is really important. So we have very strong Hispanic males that support Hispanic women and are not, intimidated by the fact of the strength of the Latina women in their family. And so, for me, I feel like, my great-great-grandmother, who got here in the early 1900s and was a Hispanic pioneer in Flagstaff. My family's been here for 5 generations. I think about her. She was a teacher in Mexico. She came and she was determined to teach people how to read, because she believed that everybody should be able, when they work, they should be able to sign their name for their paycheck. They should be able to read their paycheck. They should be able to, to participate fully by being able to read. And so she taught several of the sawmill workers and the railroad workers how to read. She'd have lunch for them, and then she'd teach them how to read. And she also saw that in Flagstaff during that time, it was very segregated. And she experienced where, Mexican Americans or Mexicans were not able to worship in church because churches were segregated. And so there was not a church for Mexicans. And so she helped found Our Lady of Guadalupe Church here in Flagstaff. And so she was one of the Hispanic families, and there were several of them that, raised the money, initially, like bought 1 sack of cement at a time. They had a little book where they'd keep the records of families, and every paycheck from the sawmill or the railroad, they would give the equivalent of like $1, and buy the materials. And they constructed that church with their, sweat, blood, and tears. And that church still stands. And that's where my parents got married. That's where I got married. That's where there's been celebrations of baptisms and marriages, and, tearful celebrations of funerals. And so, that's like a physical symbol of the strength of my family, my ancestors. So that's who I think of as role models. I mean, when there's an injustice that they saw, they addressed it. When there was a need in the community, they, made sure that need was met. And so it's just been I think a life of service and a life of wanting to make a difference.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah, it's hard I think, to name one specific thing. I mean, we all know Liz stands out in the community in everything that she does for our citizens, for our youth, for so much. But I also think, it's easy to have a role model, a mentor, and, just with us here, Feliz, I admire you for, going to school and going to your master's and all the talents that you bring, and your youth, and, the different way that you see things from how I saw things. And, I was brought up in a more strict manner, where you don't ever defy your father. And my mom was this, she served my dad, everything, and took care of him, and was this wonderful caretaker. But you always knew that she would stand behind you, and when you needed her to stand in front of you and take it on, she was there to do that,
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't see myself as a leader, I don't, or a role model, but I do know that, I am being watched by other people. And so I think we hold ourselves in that, in that vision that somebody's always watching to learn from you, to see how you can, speak and control yourself and be an influence and be a positive. And there's all these people that we can rely on and look to. And, you know, Viviana, you being a single mom, it's so tough to do that. And you know, it's this strength, I think, that we all share, you know, and we wrap our arms around that, and we wrap our arms around family and community, because we are those caretakers and caregivers, and we want, you know, we want to make sure that everybody has that same opportunity, and, you know, set those goals.
That's so great. And Theresa, I mean, you're absolutely, I mean, you are a role model. I mean, everyone here on this screen is a role model, and has so much strength and so much to offer and to teach others. I mean, and I think that's one of the things, is like, we're open to learning, and in that openness too, we're open to sharing, you know, our trials, our tribulations, our, you know, our whole being. I mean, it's really, I think it's wonderful I find that very much in Latino women, and it's great to see. How about you, Viviana?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, I agree. I mean, I think there's so many incredible women in history, and currently just doing so many incredible things, and that, you know, they're all role models. But I always, for this type of question, I always think of my mom. You know, I always go back to my mother, and just her sacrifices in life, her courage. You know, she left Guatemala when she was 21, and, you know, just because she wanted a new life, you know, new opportunities. And my life here in this country is thanks to her, and to her bravery, to her courage to leave behind her family, her friends, everything she knew, and start a new life in this country. And so I always think of her as an inspiration, and also of the other women in my family that I never had a chance to meet. I always think about them and wonder what their lives were. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, I never had a chance to meet her. She died when my mom was 2. And then I've heard of other really amazing women on my dad's side of the family, who were entrepreneurs, and who were just these incredible, you know, really involved women in their communities. But I never had a chance to meet them. So I just have these stories of them. And so I find inspiration in that history, and in, you know, the stories I hear from my mother. And that's definitely who inspires me, and what I think about often.
Definitely.
What about you, Feliz?
I feel like I have so many role models, phenomenal role models in the Latino community, and I just feel really blessed. You know, I think a lot about my ancestors, and I've been doing more research about them, and I think of my great grandma Cordova, who she had 11 kids, and I was lucky enough to meet her and grow up with her for a little while, and these vivid memories of her being this independent, stubborn woman who was just so powerful in everything she did. And you know, at I think it was 90 years old, we found her on top of her roof fixing the roof from a leak, and we were just like, Grandma, you can't be on the roof. Yes.
I'm gonna do that.
And then underneath her car, fixing like an oil leak, and all of these things, and just her fierce independence. I think of that. And, you know, I feel so blessed and so lucky to have 3 sets of grandparents who have really influenced who I am today as a human being, and who have really taught me to be proud of where I come from. And I feel very blessed, because I have a plethora of role models in my life who have helped make me into the woman I am today, and I carry them with me each and every day. This is my grandmother's medal, and I have a tattoo for my grandparents, because they really they are the backbone of who I am. And so I just think of them in so many ways, and my parents too. My parents are resilient people, and they really have shown me what it means to be persistent, and what it means to pursue your dreams, and to never give up. And I could go on about my role models forever. My mother-in-law, you know, she's this fierce, independent woman too, and I have so many role models that I could go on about. So I won't talk about them all, but yeah.
I know that makes me think about stories that I've heard about my maternal great grandmother, called her Mama Petra, and I never got to meet her, but she had a restaurant there on Phoenix Avenue, and it was just right on the other side of the tracks. And I think the things that really stand out was that everybody was always so impressed because the Babbitts came to eat at her restaurant, and and they enjoyed her food so much, and they talked about the Reardons going there, and these very influential names of people that were in Flagstaff back then. But it also shows that we were still influential in it. She owned a restaurant. She came with my grandfather. My grandpa was killed as they were migrating over from Mexico. They had their land had been taken from them, and in that process, my grandpa and my great grandma were the only ones that survived. And so here she comes to a country and a land where she doesn't know a lot of people or anybody, but she had the wherewithal to be able to save money, and they bought a house, and they opened the front end as a restaurant, and they lived in the back end. And and grandpa ended up, he was the only child then, but then ended up having 15 children, and they all worked in that restaurant, and they all started learning their values there. And it's just like, wow, seems like such a difficult time to live in, but they all were so resilient, and so they would do anything to be able to make their family happy, and to be able to make sure that there were successes, and I don't know, it's a lot to think about.
No, it definitely is.
I was just
go ahead,
thinking
Liz.
about that. Oh yeah, so I was just thinking about when you said about businesses. I mean, a lot of Hispanic pioneer families were very entrepreneurial. I mean, my grandfather opened up one of the first businesses in south side of Flagstaff. He had a market, and it was called Everybody's Market. And again, it was during the times of segregation. And so, Black people shopped at markets owned by Black people. Hispanics shopped at markets owned by Hispanic people. And my grandfather was very much a trailblazer. He had the market. He called it Everybody's Market because he welcomed everybody to shop at his market. And so his market was, patronized by people of all ethnicities. And that was something that was pretty much unheard of. And I also understand, I didn't know my grandmother either on my mother's side. But I understand she was very much the same way, very welcoming, really was the type of person who was super strong and stood up to injustices. And I mean, I think that's, that's, like I said, I think that's just probably part of our DNA. And so, but it's really neat to, to hear about just the difference that the Hispanic community has made in Flagstaff and our community in Coconino County, and continues to have an influence. It's really a source of pride.
Absolutely. So we're kind of wrapping up on our time right now, but I want to end with one last question. So if you all could think of just maybe one word that you would choose to describe the Latino community, what would it be and why? I can start.
Okay, yeah, go.
I think of resilience. I just think about how fiercely resilient our community has been, in the United States and around the world. That's the one word that comes to mind initially. Our ancestors are resilient, we're resilient, and we're witnessing our resilience in the U.S. today now. And so that's the word I choose. Liz?
That's a great word. That was one of my words. So I'm going to do just two words really quick: vibrant and hardworking. And I think, vibrant, it just reminds me of like a sarape, like a beautiful cloth. I mean, it's colorful, it's vibrant. There's a lot of, I feel like as a people, we approach everything with energy and with enthusiasm, and that, again, that resilience, like nothing's going to get us down. We're going to keep forging ahead. And that's part of that hard work. I mean, you know, my whole family's life has been based on hard work. And that's a, you know, strong work ethic is something that's been passed down to me that I'm passing down to the next generation. And so that's one thing I have found with my family and other Latinos that I've met is that we're not afraid of work. And we work hard to provide for our families and to give to our community. So that's why it's beautiful, actually, so beautiful.
Yeah. You took all the great words.
Well,
those were all
one of
mine.
ours.
Yeah, I think though other words that come to mind for me is like accepting and bonded. I mean, we don't have to know you to offer a helping hand. We don't need to know all your history and your background to say hello, how are you? Just to engage in each other all the time, not having those walls or those fronts where you're apprehensive to say hello to anybody. It's we welcome one and all. You don't have to be one of us or a part of a family or a part of this or a group or anything else. We're accepting of everyone. I think it's easy for us to do that, and once we get that, we bond and we include everybody. And
absolutely.
That's great. Well, I think I'll close it with beautiful, right? Because I think we are just a beautiful people, from our music to our food, our diversity, our countries, we're just a beautiful culture, incredibly loving, and like you said, Theresa, very welcoming, very hardworking. That hardworking is definitely a word that comes to mind for me as well. Just thinking of how, there's no one in my family that I can point to and say that, everybody's worked really, really hard and continues to work really hard, and they have the strongest work ethic, and that's something that I definitely carry with me and want to pass on to my daughter. And so, I think beautiful is a really good word to describe us as a culture and as a people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I just say one last thing, just really quick? And so I think I love that that just like this vision is coming to my mind of like inviting and including. I mean, that's so much like our culture, right? It's like when you see someone and you don't know them, or you're being introduced to somebody, it's like, come on in, like bust in, come on in, come in. Serve you right away a cup of coffee, or do you want something to eat? I mean,
make yourself at home.
And and that's like today. Like I love it that you all joined today. It is so amazing. And just so everybody knows, originally the tape was supposed to be about, the video was about like have one person share. They wanted me to share my experience as a Latina or Hispanic, and I wanted to invite some other people in because we have so many amazing Latinas in Coconino County. And so I think that's just a part of our culture too. So I was like, hey, Feliz, join me. And then I called Theresa, can you join me? And then we called Viviana, literally like, hey, come join us, come do this. And we all felt like it was important to get together and have this coffee and just share ourselves with you. And so, I mean, I think this is really fun. Feliz, Viviana, and Theresa is super fun. And, I think we should start like a cafecito at the county and just invite people in. Invite people to just,
that'd be awesome.
Just talk. Like, let's just have like a 45-minute talk, and we can just share, who we are, because it's really, I just feel really connected, and especially during this time when we can't be connected, like physically connected in our offices. This is just so great. And so, Feliz, thanks for putting this together. It's really been amazing.
Yes,
absolutely. No, and gracias a todas las Latinas poderosas who are able to join. I'm really grateful for you all to be here and to have had this wonderful, fruitful conversation with you guys. And I'm honored to know each of you and honored to work with you. And I'm excited for what this month brings for us. So cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers to that. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Salud.
Salud.
Salud. Salud.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Gracias. Gracias.
Adios.
Adios.
Pasen buen